Okay, hi, criminal defense attorney Nate Amendola, owner of Nate Amendola Defense. Let's talk about criminal law in plain English. Been talking a lot about some constitutional issues and criminal procedure, namely arrests. Okay, so let's get to some basics here. What do you do if you are arrested? All right. So, number one, let's define arrest. We've done this before. An arrest certainly is when you're put in handcuffs and the cop says you're under arrest. Okay. But let's think about why you're under arrest in that. There's no sort of definition that you're under arrest when you're in handcuffs, right? But think about that. You're cuffed, which means your freedom of movement, your freedom to do things according to your own volition has been curtailed because you're in cuffs and you've been put in the back of a cruiser or side of the road, whatever the case may be. So an arrest is when you're confined and your ability to exercise your freedom has been curtailed. Okay, so your lawyer may argue that you've been under arrest, even if the cops haven't cuffed you, and even if the cops haven't said or the police haven't said, you're under arrest. If there's a show of force, for example, they surround you. There's 4 or 5 officers. They're in, they're these days police are so militarized. They've got guns and all sorts of bulletproof vests, and it's just crazy. They look like the military. 3 or 4 officers come upon you, and they have one's behind you, one's in front of you. Even though they haven't cuffed you, one could argue is certainly after a few moments or a minute or two, whatever they're doing, that you've been arrested. You can't leave. If you leave, they're gonna they may go after you, or they're standing in your way, or whatever the case may be. So that's an arrest. All right. So what do you do when you've been arrested? We've talked a lot about this. You're not going to talk your way out of an arrest. It's just not going to happen. I've been doing this for 15 years. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where somebody is going to talk themselves out of an arrest. That goes for you lawyers, even the criminal defense lawyers. You're not going to talk your way out of an arrest, even if you don't think that there's probable cause, and maybe there isn't. Yes, that is for the officer to decide whether there's probable cause, but ultimately the decision on whether the officer was correct in his or her decision is up to a judge, or even better, if you can convince a district attorney that there's no probable cause, you could potentially get rid of the case before an arraignment. But you're just not going to talk your way out of it. It's not going to happen. And frankly, it's just going to get worse for you. Talked about this. Police are people. I think it's great to assume, and I do this with everybody, there's certainly some assholes out there, but, people want to do the right thing. And I think it's best, you catch more bees with honey. I think it's best to treat people with kindness and respect, even though they're arresting you and that's been your darkest hour. All right. I've said this so many times. There's nothing to say to the police. All right. If they start questioning you, you're not going to talk your way out of the crime. You're just going to make things worse for you. So there aren't really any magic words. There's sort of the magic idea of what you need to say, but there aren't these specific words. If you just say, hey, look, I don't want to answer your questions. I'm sorry. You don't even need to say I'm sorry. Say, officer, respectfully, I decline to answer any of your questions. All right. That's not going to put you in further arrest. Okay. The fact that you've invoked your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, it can't even be used against you. Right. But you know what can be used against you? Anything you say. Right. Hey, do you know, we got a call from Jane Smith, that you're up to no good. Do you know Jane Smith? Yes. Okay, great. You've just, helped the police along in their investigation. Hey, I'm pulling you over. Look, I detect some alcohol. Where are you coming from? Coming from Tosca. Okay. Do you have any drinks? Yes. Great. You've just made it worse for you. Okay. You don't have to tell you, you shouldn't lie to them, right? You shouldn't say no, but you just don't need to say anything. Officer, I'm not going to answer any of your questions. Okay. So when you're under arrest, I hope this doesn't happen to you, but if it does, you just don't say anything. And you certainly, when you get back to the police station, and when you're sitting there, you don't say anything on your own, right? You don't make any spontaneous statements, oh man, I really effed up, or whatever the case may be. You've got to remain cool, calm, and collected. You got to be really stoic about this, all right? So what happens is you're going to get arrested. You're going to be taken back to the police station or the barracks the state trooper barracks, and you're going to be processed. They're going to ask you a bunch of booking questions. This is not the time to play hanky-panky, okay, and get really cute with them. You just answer their questions. What's your name? John Smith. What's your address? 123 Main Street. How old are you? 43. What's your birthday? April 21st, 1981. Whatever the case may be. Who's your spouse? Okay, just give them these answers. You have to do it, right? And it just doesn't look good later on to the court if you've been a complete jerk, okay? And that's it, okay? So you'll answer the booking questions, they'll fingerprint you, whatever, and they'll put you in the holding cell at the station or the barracks. The purpose of that is to get a bail clerk. They have to do this. There's somebody on call to come down and review your situation and set jail bail, right? And that's actually, I should say not all. There could be overnight holds for a crime like a domestic violence or something like that. But, they got to come down and figure out if you should be released or not. And if so, how much the bail is going to be so you can show up to court the next day. There's always a $40 sort of general fee. So even if you're released on your own personal recognizance, which means your own promise to appear, which is what you want to happen, you still got to pay $40 cash, all right? So they'll put you in the cell, and then hopefully you'll get released based on some bail, and you've got to, on your own accord, show up to court the next day or Monday, whatever the case may be, all right? With all these things, really just be polite, be kind. I know it's probably the hardest thing in the world to do, and just not to be crude about this, just shut up. There's just nothing you can say that's going to help you, all right? And then when you get released, you should find a lawyer, right? Because you're going to need a lawyer. I think it's generally advisable, if you're going to make a phone call, by the way, this is important. You're afforded a phone call. Lots of folks who get arrested call their spouses or somebody in their family, sometimes a friend. This can go sideways for you, by the way, all right? Number one, that call is not private, all right? Unless you're calling your attorney, but I think you should always assume that this call is not private. And I've seen people get really jammed up with this. Hey, honey, it's me, Nate. I'm at the police station. I got arrested for XYZ. And then, of course, your wife starts asking you some questions about that. What? What do you mean? And then you say, oh, the drugs were in my pocket. It's just, I know that's what may have happened, right? But now you're sort of admitting that you had possession. It's just a problem. And police, I've seen this. I heard Johnny talk to his dad. He said, I have a case where the age of a female was in question. The female had alleged sexual misconduct, and she was under the age of 14, and of course under the age of 16, which is the age of consent in Massachusetts. And a parent was asking, wait, how old was the girl? Because the police hadn't quite established that. And on the phone, the client says, I think she was 13. Great. Or she was 13. Even better. He says it with, certainty. That's a problem, right? Now you've just helped, you've just helped the prosecution in their case against you. So it's best just to pick up the phone, be very matter of fact. Hi, it's me, Sam. I'm at, the Cohasset Police Station. I'm under arrest. Bail has been set. Can you come pick me up? There's going to be lots of questions. Oh my God, what happened? Hey, this is not the time to talk about this. We'll talk when we get home. All right? So that's what to do if you've been arrested.